Hi everybody, welcome back to the Aurora Live channel. My name is Stuart Tan, bringing you another episode on mastery. Now, mastery is something which is a really broad term. I want to make sure that everybody has got a broad idea of what it means to me and how you can go about striving towards mastery. So for the longest time, I've been striving towards mastery by reading books. Uh, Almost any kind of nonfiction book that has to do with personal development, I typically devour it, especially if there's a clear purpose why I'm doing it. It might be a break time, like this morning I sit down, do a little bit of reading just to refresh my mind. At the same time, sometimes I've got clients whom are hiring me for a personal mastery retreat or a leadership development program, and as a result, I take to those books, read up a little bit more, and then use that not just to create a program for my development of my clients, but also of myself. So just to give you an idea of how mastery looks like, in my opinion, mastery is purely based on understanding how we perform in real life across multiple dimensions. So I talk about this thing known as the life vision chart, where you've got elements related to something that you can control within yourself, your physical, your emotional, and your psychological routines that eventually build up your character. Character, in my opinion, is a lag measure of the things that you put into those three elements. Then surrounding that is your social circle, right? Your intimate relationships, your family relationships, and other things in your social circle, like your colleagues, your friends, your acquaintances. Surrounding that, we've got something related to your business, your material life. So career, finances, and of course your lifestyle are critical in terms of helping you to understand whether you've got gaps or whether you're filling gaps with things. And finally, surrounding that, which again is to some people it might be a surprise, your spirituality. As you're growing from within, you're also attempting to think about how these external spiritual forces may also impact you in terms of your calling, your willingness to receive the call and move forward with your life. So that is a really big piece. I won't touch on every single one of that. In fact, I might do a series on each of those elements and those components so that you can see it holistically. Now, this idea did not come from me. It came from John and Missy Butcher, who came out with Lifebook, which is a much more in-depth study of your human condition. The reason why I've structured it in the way that I do is because firstly, I need some way to remember all the categories in life. Secondly, I want to see the synergistic relationship across those patterns. And I think I've come to find that movement, growing from within, is extremely important. In addition to that, we want to be able to look at discernment practices. Discernment practices are so key. I call it self-awareness analytics, right? So if you're looking into improving yourself, you need to know how your machinery works, right? So once you are able to identify patterns of behavior, it becomes cool for you to look at the way you do things and then begin to adjust it if you don't like it or it's not leading you to the end outcome that you want. So let's get started. I would highly recommend that as you take a look at this frame of the life vision chart, to begin this process of studying elements within what we call the discernment star. You can take a look at sensations, you can take a look at emotions, consider your belief systems or your cognitions, think about your thought patterns, images that go inside your mind, and so on. So there's a whole range of different things that you can do discernment on, including the subtypes of thoughts, such as your belief system, your value system, your sense of identity, and even your decision-making process. I'll give you an example. The other day, I was at a workshop, and somehow as I was listening to the speaker whom I was attending this workshop in, sort of, I'm not sure, it rubbed me the wrong way. I couldn't feel why I was feeling that way at that point of time. So I whipped up my phone and I started to type in a few thoughts, especially just spilling out what I was feeling at that point of time. So I said I was feeling disturbed. I didn't know why. Was it because the speaker was rubbing me the wrong way? Was it because I had high expectations? What was it? And I started to list down all of these questions. I noted that I had a sensation at the back of my head which felt like a fuzzy awkwardness, and I really had a behavioral instinct, in a sense, to want to leave the room. But just out of courtesy of listening to the speaker, I decided to just stay in the room. Now, what eventually happened was I went back home and I started to pore through each of these. And I asked myself, so what was the belief that I had about myself at that point of time? What was the belief that I had about the speaker at that point of time? And as I unraveled it, it came to a little bit of maybe not so much of a surprise, but an awareness to me that what I was experiencing was a sense of discomfort with a certain approach of doing things. And I asked myself, if I were the speaker, how would I do it? And I realized that I would have done that entire presentation completely differently, and I think I might have gotten a better result. So a sense of frustration, irritation, discomfort that came from my sense of perfectionism. Now, as I thought about that, I asked myself, is this the kind of person that I want to be? Do I want to continue to do things this way? And how is it going to help me as I move forward? What are things I want to keep? What are things that I want to discard? And that revealed to me a very interesting set of things that I needed to do on a regular basis. So as you trace your experiences, you begin to see patterns of belief, patterns of emotion, patterns of thought that come into the fray that you may need to reflect upon. And as I do my own reflection and I'm collecting each and every one of these, it's not a cut method, right? So you don't just do a reflection on one day and say it's over. You revisit and you go through that again. So this is more of a surfacing from the unconscious into the conscious mind so that you will be able to make a clear distinction in terms of what your patterns of behavior actually are. Maybe these patterns may change over time, but not all the time will they be inconsistent. There's going to be some kind of cogency, some kind of consistency involved in that. And I'd like you to go and find out about these. Now, once you've identified some of these patterns, you're going to ask yourself, are these patterns helpful for me or not helpful for me? In the bigger scheme of my life vision, do these patterns of behavior influence and impact any one of these areas of the life vision chart? And does that help me to get to where I need to go? Or is there something missing? And through that process of discernment, it'll help me to solidify my own sense of identity, my own personal understanding of myself, and what I should be doing next. Right? So personal mastery is really about that gap between A and B, between your current self and your future self. If you want to achieve a certain level of performance in the gym, for example, there's point A to point B. If you wanted to establish a fantastic relationship, that's point A to point B. And if you're reflecting on only one specific area in your discernment, it's very likely that you're going to falter at some point of time, because think of it as a balancing scale across multiple regions in your life. And if you're just lopsided in, let's say, the social side of things, right? Friends, family, intimate relationships, maybe your finances or your career might suffer. That kind of a weighing scale may put into perspective what each and every one of these life categories can do to you or do for you, especially if you're aware of your patterns of behavior. So do you typically maximize your time? Do you typically become perfectionistic, like some cases that I find myself doing? Do you discard opportunities to learn? Do you shove hurt away? What are some of these patterns that actually tend to crop up? So I'd like you to take a moment to do these kinds of reflections. I know it's not easy, and sometimes you need to find time to sit away from your computer, or maybe find a space where you're not even disturbed, in walking in nature, by the beach, or wherever it might be, so that you can collate that information and process that information to get a higher understanding of yourself as the days go by. So I'd like you to take this moment to observe yourself. How has this information impacted you? What emotions have actually surfaced? What behaviors, what instinct do you want to go for? And what are you intending to not do? What are you intending to discard? So over the course of time, you come to realize that any bit of information will start to impact you. And the moment it impacts you, write down what you're feeling, what viscerally inside your gut, in your body, what are you intending to do? So that you take the unconscious and you let it come up to the conscious, so that there's clarity, so that you have a greater understanding of how you operate, and so that you can bridge any gap from point A to point B. So, did you learn anything from that video? If you did, just give it a thumbs up and then click on the subscribe button and hit the notifications icon so that you and I will continue to stay in touch and I can provide you with updates whenever we have new videos.